So here I am working away at assembling this little LS-based engine, and as I'm assembling this LS-based engine, I want to put this valve cover gasket in place on the valve cover, and I noticed something. Now, before I show you it, I want you to keep in mind everything I'm putting in this engine except for the block itself. So I did not touch the rotating assembly. All I did was, oil pan gasket, had the cylinder heads gone through at the machine shop, things like that, because this is a cam swap motor. Now, this is a motor that was dropped off with me to do the cam swap, change the bearings, things like that. So everything related to that has been gone into a parts washer and washed for a very long time, especially considering how dirty this engine was. Now, this is also an engine that had burned a little bit of oil in the past, and so I thought it would be very wise for me to bring something to everybody's attention. Now, this thing, the valve covers, the heads, the timing cover, the oil pan, things like that, the parts washer that was used was a very large stand-up, like a CUDA machine. I'll go ahead and throw a little display here image of what one of those machines looks like. Maybe I'll even show the inside of what one of those machines look like. So basically they have a big rotating table inside of them, and this table is surrounded by a bunch of chemical spraying nozzles. These spray nozzles are spraying a bunch of cleaning chemical into the parts, trying to clean them out as best as possible. It does a very good job of cleaning the parts, but even so, you still have to double check everything, and this valve cover is a very prime example of that. So the valve cover here, you can see it looks very, very clean. However, this thing is going to consume oil if I don't address something. So you can see the valve cover here. It looks very clean, right? I mean, there's a little bit of stuff in here that's just kind of baked on crusties that you really can't get off. This thing was completely caked in stuff. I mean, even inside here looks clean. However, it did miss a very critical area. When these things are sitting in the motor, they're sitting like this, right? And the rocker arms are like this, and they're spraying oil up like this, okay? That oil that comes up here hits this, splashes around, and it's supposed to be able to drain out of this valve cover somewhere. Now, I do notice this valve cover is unique in that most of them will have little drains right here. And I think that's the updated one. This is the non-updated one. So this is the problem child one, I believe. Now, this one would definitely have a problem because the rocker arms are spraying. It's going to be spraying here. The PCV valve is sucking through here. And this whole area is going to get oil in it, and that oil can't escape, especially since the only bleed hole that is in this valve cover is completely blocked off. There is no way that thing is going to flow any sort of oil. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to open that thing up. So as simple as that. Now it's opened up a little bit. I'm going to take this pick, since it's a 90 degree, I'm going to work it around in there, see how much sludge comes off the pick. And you can see there's a little bit of dirt on the pick there. So now I'm going to have to take a little bit of extra time and care cleaning out this valve cover. Now, I could just update it to the newest valve cover. It'd probably be perfectly fine, sure. I'm going to try something on this particular one and see if he has an oil consumption issue first. I'm going to do this part of it out of just my own experiment. I'm not going to charge the guy for it. I'm just going to do it, and then I'm going to let him know what I do. Him and I have a good relationship, so I'm going to let him know what I did, and if he has any oil consumption issues, I will just go ahead and replace the valve cover, and I will let you know at the end of this video what happens with that. But I'm going to go ahead, clean out, obviously, this whole area with some brake clean and a little tube, and go through all the rest of that jazz, trying to make sure it's perfect. And then I'm going to take my drill and a drill bit and some air, and I'm going to go ahead and put a bunch of air in here, pushing and pressurizing behind this plate. Now, while it's under pressure behind the plate, I'm going to take my drill bit and I'm going to drill some little drain holes in here like the updated valve cover has. If this works, this video is going to be posted as a update your own valve cover. You don't have to buy one type of a video, because I believe that there is no reason to replacing this. GM claims the reason these valve covers fail is because the RTV behind here is what lets go and it starts leaking. I don't think that's true. GM's full of crap when it comes to a lot of their updates and repairs, as you will. The air quotes if you're listening. Now, I find it funny that they say things like that. So I always have to think, maybe they're full of crap and there's a better solution. I always question it. Every manufacturer, not just GM, I always question, is there a better solution? Are they full of crap? Let's think logical, let's figure it out, and that's what I'm here to do today. So I'm going to go ahead and modify this thing. I'll give you guys a clip of what it looks like, and once that's done, I'll give you a update as to how well it worked or did not work. So the modification is completed as far as I think I should do it. Now, I do want to say a couple things quick, just because I figured for good measure, I'd call the customer and verify how much oil he is consuming. So, according to the customer, he figures he was consuming about a quart of oil every 3,000 miles, which is not very much compared to GM spec. And what I'm hearing in the community for these engines is a lot of people are seeing consumption more around the quart every 1,000 miles, and some are even seeing it a quart every time they fill up with gas, which is an insane amount of oil consumption. That should never be acceptable whatsoever. GM, I think the spec was a quart every 1,000 miles. That's not acceptable either. A quart every 3,000 miles, okay, I can kind of accept that, maybe, kind of, sort of. Not really either. Consider the context. I build these engines, over here. There we go. These engines as race engines, right? So I build these engines. Many of them are making over 1,000 horse at the wheel, right? So, not the aluminum block versions, the iron block versions, mind you. Regardless, they have more displacement. They're the same basic engine. They have much larger ring gap. If that gap is huge, you're going to have more oil consumption and more blow-by, which is the amount of ventilation that the crankcase needs to evacuate all the gases that are caused from the explosions happening in the combustion chambers. Now, the race engines that I build, these are 16, maximum 20 thousandths clearance on the ring gap. The race engines for these vehicles that I'm building are anywhere from 24 thousandths, bare minimum, to 30 thousandths, depending on how much horsepower they need to make worth of clearance. Now, 30 thousandths, think about that. That's almost double what the GMs come with from the factory. GM also claims that there's a baffle in the oil pan squirting oil at the cylinder walls, causing it to burn oil. Nope. I'm not having any of that. The engines that I build, twice the gap. Okay? Almost twice the gap. Burn way less oil. In 3,000 miles, they burn less than a quart. And we're talking like a quarter of a quart, right? So, race engines burning way less oil than a factory GM engine. It's this. It is this guy. It's always been this guy. Don't let anybody tell you anything else except for that it's this guy. Now, there is a possibility if you have a cracked head, it's a cracked head situation, or a bad valve stem seal, that could be an issue as well. 9 times out of 10, it's this piece of junk right here. So what have I done? So I have the valve cover here, and we have the factory hole right here, right? I drilled this hole here, so a little bit after, a little over an inch after that first hole here. I don't know if that thing's going to do anything at all, but whatever, I put it there. Then after this bolt, approximately the same amount, I drilled another hole. Then after this bolt, I looked at approximately the same amount, and it's right where this weird dimple is. So I thought, screw it, I'll just go right here. And then on this one, I want approximately the same amount, and that's a nice spot because it's right in a corner. And then this guy, I used the same size drill bit for these to just open this one up a little bit, because why not? That is the lowest part when the valve cover is sitting in the motor like this. This little spot here is the lowest spot. So I want that to be the biggest portion of the drain. And then, of course, I took the straw of my 3M brake cleaner and whizzed it all around inside each one of these holes as best I could. sprayed it through here really good, and then took my air nozzle and blew through all the holes, blew this way, blew that way, back, forth, and back and forth, and back and forth, until I got all the stuff cleaned out of there. There was a bunch of little chunks and debris, like carbon buildup stuff that was sitting there. So I went back and forth a few times doing that, and then my final thing was taking the air nozzle, aiming it into this hole, and then I full throttled it, and I felt with my other hand over top of all the holes, making sure they were flowing about the same. And then I felt over top of this guy here, which flowed a lot less. This is a restricted orifice, so it should not flow very much. And it didn't, but it did have flow coming through it, and that's important. You do want some flow coming through here. If you don't have any flow, this thing's plugged up, and your crankcase isn't going to clean out. You're going to end up with a lot of stuff getting built up in your crankcase and making your oil contaminated to the point of where it can't do its job. So make sure this is flowing as well. And as long as this process worked, my fingers are crossed. I don't think they need to be, because I believe it's going to work. And I will come back with a update in just a second as to whether it worked or not. I believe it's going to. So talking with the customer about his valve cover situation, it turns out that that thing did take care of the issue. So if you do this, if you have the non-updated valve cover and you don't have any of those holes there, you can do this procedure and it will take care of your oil consumption issue. This guy took his pipe off for the PCV valve and actually looked down the pipe after we cleaned it out with brake clean. So I cleaned it out before he took the vehicle so that it was nice and clean when he took the vehicle. He checked it after 2 weeks of having the vehicle with that thing, modified the way that I did it rather than putting the updated valve cover in. And it turns out that he has no oil whatsoever. It looks just as dry as it did when I cleaned it. So it worked very well in keeping the oil from traveling up there and causing him to burn oil. So if you need to modify your valve cover, this will be a perfect solution for it. And if you have the updated valve cover already, but you're still consuming oil, all you really have to do is clean out the ports really well, and then maybe the hole right underneath that PCV valve, I would go ahead and clean that hole out and make it just a little bit bigger than it was originally, and it should take care of the issue. That style I have not confirmed on yet, but I would imagine it would work just the same as the other style as long as it's cleaned properly. I think that is the big difference between the updated and non-updated valve cover, is the lack of holes versus the added holes in the valve cover. So the trick worked. Hopefully this helps somebody out. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button down below. Like, share, subscribe, and as always, I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.